The first sound was a choked cough, a small wet noise that clawed Liam Gallagher awake from a restless sleep. He lay still for a moment, disoriented, the pre-dawn gloom of his mother's spare bedroom pressing in on him. Then it came again, more insistent, followed by a faint distressed mewl that was utterly wrong. Jasper. Liam was out of bed in an instant, his heart suddenly a cold stone in his chest. He found his mother Margaret, already kneeling beside her beloved Maine Coon Jasper in the hallway. The cat, usually a majestic 15-pound fluff ball of serene confidence, was huddled, trembling a pathetic puddle of gray fur on the polished wood floor. His breathing was shallow, ragged. A string of saliva, tinged an ugly yellow, dripped from his slack jaw. Liam. Oh, Liam. I don't know what's wrong. Margaret whispered, her voice thin with terror, her hand gnarled with arthritis, hovering over Jasper's shuddering back, afraid to touch him. Her normally rosy face was bleached with fear, her blue eyes wide and dark in the dim light. Liam, chief of the Haven County Animal Welfare Police, felt a sickening wave of professional dread crash over his personal anguish. He'd seen this before too many times, the rapid onset, the respiratory distress, the salivation. His mind, trained and hardened, ticked through a grim checklist. He needs a vet, Mom, now. He scooped Jasper into his arms. The cat was limp, his body strangely heavy, his purr usually a rumbling motor of contentment, terrifyingly absent. Margaret scrambled to her feet, her movements jerky with panic, fumbling for her coat and keys. Though Liam was already heading for the door, Jasper cradled gently but securely. What could it be? Margaret cried, following him out into the chill morning air, the sky just beginning to pale from black to a bruised purple. He was fine last night, Liam. He ate his dinner. He curled up with me on the sofa. Liam didn't answer, his face grim. He laid Jasper on a soft blanket in the passenger seat of his official vehicle. He'd driven it over to stay the night with his mom, a small comfort since his father's passing last year. He hit the ignition, the engine roaring to life with an urgency that matched his own. As he pulled away from the curb, his gaze swept the quiet manicured lawns of Primrose Lane, lingering for a split second on the imposing, perfectly maintained house, 2 doors down, its pristine flower beds, illuminated by motion sensor lights. Evelyn Holloway's house. A flicker of an entirely unprofessional, deeply personal suspicion sparked in his gut, hot and unwelcome. The emergency vet clinic was a sterile oasis of fluorescent light and hushed anxiety. Dr. Ramirez Young, competent with tired eyes that had seen too much, took one look at Jasper, and her expression became guarded. Let's get him on oxygen right away. What are his symptoms, Chief Gallagher? Liam recited them, his voice clipped, professional, betraying none of the turmoil churning inside him. He was Chief Gallagher now, not just Margaret's terrified son. He had to be. As Dr. Ramirez and a technician whisked Jasper into the treatment area, Margaret collapsed onto a hard plastic chair in the waiting room, her shoulders shaking. Liam sat beside her, putting an arm around her, the familiar scent of her lavender soap doing little to soothe the cold dread that had taken root in his soul. They'll help him, Mom. Ramirez is the best. But even as he said it, the image of that yellowed saliva, the particular quality of Jasper's distress, screamed one word at him: poison. And not accidental, deliberate, lethal. The central question, who would do such a thing to a gentle, beloved therapy cat, and why, began to burn in his mind, a question his professional life was dedicated to answering, but one he had never imagined he'd be asking about his own family. Liam's life in Haven County had always revolved around animals, a passion that had guided him from childhood volunteer work at the local shelter to his current demanding role as chief of the Animal Welfare Police. It was a job that brought him face to face with the worst of humanity: neglect, cruelty, senseless violence, but also with the profound bond between people and their animal companions, a bond he understood implicitly. His team was small, but dedicated, a group of officers and investigators who shared his commitment to giving a voice to the voiceless. They handled everything from puppy mills and dogfighting rings to cases of individual abuse, their work often heartbreaking, occasionally dangerous, but always vital. His mother, Margaret Gallagher, was the heart of his world. A retired librarian, she was a woman of quiet strength and immense kindness, her life now centered around her small garden, her books, and most importantly, Jasper. After Liam's father, Michael, had succumbed to a sudden heart attack the previous spring, a profound, suffocating grief had enveloped Margaret. She'd become withdrawn, her spark dimming the silence in the house on Primrose Lane, growing heavier each day. Liam, worried sick, had suggested a therapy animal. Jasper had come from a rescue specializing in older cats. A magnificent Maine Coon with sage-green eyes and a gloriously plumed tail, he possessed an uncanny ability to sense Margaret's moods. When she was lost in sorrow, he would materialize silently, rubbing against her ankles, his deep purr a comforting vibration. When anxiety tightened her chest, he would settle heavily in her lap, a warm, furry anchor in the storm of her emotions. He wasn't just a pet. He was her confidant, her comfort, the gentle living heartbeat that had slowly, patiently drawn her back from the brink of despair. The change in Margaret had been remarkable. Laughter returned to her voice, color to her cheeks. She fussed over Jasper, grooming his long fur, preparing his special salmon pâté, chattering to him as she worked in her garden, Jasper often lounging nearby on a sunny patch of grass. Liam, witnessing this transformation, felt a surge of gratitude for the quiet, intuitive cat who had given him his mother back. Primrose Lane, part of the larger Willow Creek Estates HOA, was on its surface idyllic. Manicured lawns, freshly painted houses, a sense of orderly calm. But beneath the veneer, like any community, it had its tensions, its petty squabbles, its personality clashes. And the most prominent personality, the one who seemed to thrive on imposing her will and her exacting standards on everyone else, was Ms. Evelyn Holloway. Evelyn Holloway, president of the Willow Creek Estates HOA for the past 7 years, lived in a house that mirrored her personality, immaculate, rigid, and utterly devoid of warmth. Her own garden was a sterile expanse of perfectly edged green lawn and sharply pruned rose bushes, their blooms a uniform, almost aggressive red. She was a woman in her late 60s, always impeccably dressed, her silver hair styled in a helmet-like coif that seemed impervious to wind or weather. Her pronouncements on HOA matters were delivered with an air of unshakable authority, her gaze sharp and appraising, quick to find fault. From the moment Margaret had brought Jasper home, Evelyn Holloway had made her disapproval known, albeit initially, through a series of passive-aggressive remarks and subtle acts of displeasure. "Oh, another animal," she'd commented to Margaret over the fence one morning, her voice carrying a distinct chill despite the warm sunshine. Jasper, sunning himself on Margaret's porch, had merely blinked slowly at her. "Do be sure it doesn't, wander Margaret. Some of us value our pristine flower beds." Margaret, always polite, had simply smiled. Jasper is a homebody, Evelyn, and he's very good about staying in his own yard. One would hope Evelyn had replied, her lips tightening. "The HOA has rather strict rules about pets causing a nuisance, you know. Noise, digging unsightly deposits." She'd cast a meaningful glance at Margaret's small, lovingly tended patch of catnip near the back steps. The first direct conflict, the inciting incident that signaled Evelyn Holloway's shift from general disapproval to a more targeted animosity, occurred a few months after Jasper's arrival. Margaret, on Liam's advice, had officially registered Jasper as her emotional support animal, providing the necessary documentation from her doctor to the HOA. She had done this primarily to ensure there would be no issues with Jasper, occasionally accompanying her to the small communal garden at the end of Primrose Lane, a place she enjoyed visiting for its tranquility and the company of a few other elderly residents. Evelyn Holloway had been furious. She'd called an emergency HOA subcommittee meeting, a committee comprised mainly of herself and 2 of her staunchest allies, to discuss the proliferation of animals, designated or otherwise, within the community. While she couldn't legally prevent Margaret from having Jasper, she used the meeting to push through a new hastily drafted bylaw requiring all pets, including emotional support animals, to be leashed and under direct physical control at all times when on any common HOA property, including the previously relaxed communal garden. Furthermore, a new vaguely worded clause was added about potential sanitary concerns and allergic reactions caused by animals, giving the HOA grounds to restrict access if complaints were received. Liam had reviewed the new bylaw. It was petty, overly restrictive, and clearly aimed at Margaret and Jasper. "She's targeting you, Mom," he'd said, his anger simmering. "This is harassment." "Oh, I don't want to make trouble." Liam, Margaret had said, her usual aversion to conflict kicking in. "It's just the little garden. Jasper doesn't mind staying on the porch with me instead." "But you mind, Mom?" You enjoy that garden, and Jasper is no trouble to anyone." Margaret had sighed. It's easier not to fight her dear. Evelyn can be very persistent when she doesn't get her way. The new rule effectively curtailed Margaret's peaceful enjoyment of the communal space with her companion. When she did try to take Jasper on a leash as mandated to the garden, Evelyn Holloway would invariably appear watching them with an hawk-like intensity, often making loud, pointed comments about shedding or potential fleas to anyone within earshot, making Margaret so uncomfortable that she eventually gave up these outings altogether. Jasper, who had enjoyed sniffing the lavender bushes and watching butterflies in the garden, seemed to sense Margaret's distress and would tug gently on his leash back towards the sanctuary of their own small yard. Evelyn's victory in restricting Jasper's access to the communal garden seemed only to embolden her. The focus of her displeasure shifted to Margaret's own property. She began a campaign of petty complaints, each one a carefully aimed barb. A formal notice arrived about the unapproved color of a decorative garden gnome Margaret's granddaughter had painted for her. Another complained about the excessive height of the sunflowers Margaret grew along her back fence, claiming they cast an unwelcome shadow on Evelyn's precious rose bushes, despite the fence being a good 20 feet from Holloway's property line. Then came the incident with the bird bath. Margaret had a small ceramic bird bath in her front yard, a source of delight as she watched sparrows and robins splash in it. One morning she found it overturned, the ceramic bowl cracked. There was no note, no explanation. But later that day, Evelyn Holloway had remarked to another neighbor, loudly enough for Margaret to overhear, "So glad to see some people are finally taking action against things that attract winged pests." And their droppings, of course. Liam had been furious when Margaret told him, "She's vandalizing your property, Mom." This has gone too far. He'd wanted to confront Evelyn directly, perhaps even file a police report for the damage, but Margaret, ever fearful of escalating the conflict, had dissuaded him. "It's just an old bird bath, Liam. I can get another. Please don't stir things up. She'll only make it worse." Worse, how Mom Liam had pressed, frustrated by his mother's passivity, even as he understood her fear. "She's bullying you. We need to stand up to her." But Margaret had shaken her head, her eyes pleading. "I just want to live peacefully, dear. With Jasper. That's all." The harassment, however, did not cease. Evelyn Holloway's tactics became more insidious. She started spreading rumors. She told Mrs. Henderson from across the street that she'd seen Jasper stalking children, a ludicrous claim as Jasper was wary of strangers and adored by the few neighborhood children he knew. She complained to the HOA management company, which she largely controlled, that Margaret's yard was becoming overgrown and attracting vermin, a clear reference to Jasper and the wild rabbits that sometimes visited Margaret's clover patch. Each complaint, each rumor, was a small drop of poison designed to isolate Margaret and create an atmosphere of hostility around her and her beloved cat. One particularly shocking escalation involved a package delivery. Margaret had ordered special orthopedic cat food for Jasper online. The delivery driver, new to the route, mistakenly left it on Evelyn Holloway's porch. Instead of simply bringing it over or informing Margaret, Evelyn left it out in the pouring rain for an entire day. When Margaret, tracking the package, finally realized the mistake and went to retrieve it, the box was soaked through the expensive food ruined. Evelyn, when confronted, had merely shrugged. "Not my responsibility to keep track of your deliveries, Margaret. Perhaps you should provide clearer instructions next time." Her tone was dismissive, her expression one of faint, malicious amusement. The waste of money was one thing. The casual cruelty, the deliberate inconvenience and distress caused to Margaret was another. It was a clear act of spite. Liam, hearing of this, felt his frustration mount. His official position as Animal Welfare Police Chief gave him authority in cases of animal cruelty and neglect, but Evelyn Holloway's actions, while malicious and bullying, trod a careful line, often falling into the gray area of HOA disputes and neighborly harassment. He couldn't arrest her for being a terrible person, much as he might want to. He advised his mother to document everything, to keep a log of Evelyn's comments and actions, but he knew Margaret was reluctant, her energy sapped by the constant low-level warfare. He installed a small security camera overlooking his mother's front yard, hoping it might act as a deterrent, or at least capture any overt acts of aggression. Evelyn noticed it, of course, her gaze lingering on it during her frequent slow patrols past Margaret's house, but she made no comment, her expression merely tightening. The midpoint of this escalating drama, the twist that began to illuminate the true depths of Evelyn Holloway's character, came not from her actions against Margaret, but from an entirely different quarter. Liam, in his professional capacity, received an anonymous tip about a possible cat hoarding situation in a dilapidated farmhouse on the outskirts of Haven County. Leading the investigation, he and his team discovered a truly horrific scene: dozens of cats living in squalor, malnourished, diseased, and terrified. It was a complex case requiring careful collection of evidence, veterinary assessments for all the animals, and the delicate task of tracing ownership of the property. As they delved into the property records, a familiar name surfaced in the chain of title from over a decade ago: Evelyn Holloway. She hadn't owned it at the time of the hoarding discovery, having sold it years prior, but further digging into old county archives and newspaper clippings unearthed a disturbing piece of local history. 15 years earlier, before she'd moved to Willow Creek Estates and reinvented herself as an HOA president, Evelyn Holloway had been investigated for animal neglect at that very same farmhouse. The case had been sensational at the time, reports of numerous animals kept in unsanitary conditions, some found dead. Charges had been filed, but then mysteriously dropped. Rumor had it that a key witness had recanted, or that there had been a procedural error. Holloway had sold the property shortly thereafter and moved, effectively disappearing from that part of the county's memory until Liam stumbled upon this connection. This discovery cast Evelyn Holloway's current animosity towards Jasper and her obsessive need for control and order in a new, sinister light. Was her behavior in Primrose Lane a manifestation of a deeper pathological issue with animals, or was it a desperate attempt to maintain a carefully constructed facade of respectability, to distance herself from a past she wanted to keep buried? Liam didn't know, but the information added a chilling dimension to her harassment of his mother. He filed the information away, a cold knot of unease tightening within him. It wasn't directly relevant to the HOA squabbles, but it painted a disturbing psychological portrait of the woman who was making his mother's life a misery. He also learned through discreet inquiries he probably shouldn't have made, but felt compelled to, that Evelyn Holloway was pushing hard within the HOA for a hugely expensive and largely unnecessary beautification project for the Willow Creek Estates common areas. The contract for this project was rumored to be going to a landscaping company called Premier Designs. Liam didn't need 3 guesses to figure out who might be, or at least have a controlling interest in. Margaret, along with a few other fiscally conservative residents, had quietly expressed concerns about the project's cost and necessity at informal gatherings, though none had yet dared to voice these concerns formally at an HOA meeting, cowed by Evelyn's aggressive advocacy for the project. If Evelyn was planning to profit from this HOA project, anyone opposing it, however mildly, might be seen as an obstacle. Margaret, with her quiet dignity and the simple, unassailable love she had for her cat, might have become an unwitting symbol of resistance to Evelyn's agenda, or simply an easy target for her ire. The poisoning of Jasper, Liam now suspected, wasn't just a random act of cruelty. It was targeted, personal, and potentially linked to this darker, hidden side of Evelyn Holloway. The upcoming HOA general meeting, scheduled for the following week, where the beautification project was up for a final vote, suddenly loomed large. Had Evelyn acted to intimidate Margaret into silence, or to remove Jasper, the focus of her strange animosity, before this crucial meeting? The thought made Liam's blood run cold. Dr. Ramirez finally emerged from the treatment room, her face grave. "We've stabilized him for now, Chief. He's on IV fluids, and we've administered an emetic and activated charcoal. His blood work is concerning. It's consistent with anticoagulant rodenticide poisoning, something like brodifacoum, nasty stuff. Causes internal bleeding. It's a slow, agonizing death if not treated aggressively and immediately." Margaret let out a small, choked sob. Liam felt a muscle jump in his jaw. Anticoagulant rodenticide. Commonly available, often flavored to be attractive to animals. Easy to deploy. Hard to trace unless you knew what you were looking for. "His prognosis?" Liam asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Guarded," Dr. Ramirez said gently. "He's received the vitamin K1 antidote, but it will take time to see if it counteracts the poison before irreversible damage is done. The next 24 to 48 hours are critical. We'll need to monitor him closely for any signs of hemorrhage." She paused. "Given your position, Chief, I have to ask, do you suspect malicious intent?" Liam met her gaze. "Yes, Doctor, I do. And I intend to find out who's responsible." He looked at his mother, her face a mask of despair. "Mom, I need you to tell me everything. Everything Jasper ate yesterday. Everywhere he went, anyone he came into contact with, anyone who came near the yard. Through her tears, Margaret recounted Jasper's day. His usual routine. Breakfast of his special salmon pâté, a little time in their fenced backyard, a nap in his favorite sunbeam by the patio door. No unfamiliar visitors. No new foods except... Oh, Liam. She gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Yesterday afternoon, Mrs. Holloway was in her front garden. Jasper was on our porch watching a butterfly. She called to him, softly, said something like, "Here, kitty kitty, pretty kitty." Why, I thought it was strange, her being so friendly all of a sudden. Jasper actually went to the edge of the porch, curious. She reached over the little dividing hedge. I couldn't see exactly what she was doing. Her back was mostly to me. Then she straightened up and went back to her roses. Jasper came back onto the porch a minute later, licking his lips. Liam felt a cold fury solidify within him, licking his lips. Had Evelyn Holloway, under the guise of a sudden, uncharacteristic friendliness, offered Jasper a poisoned treat? It was circumstantial, but it was a powerful lead, and it fit her pattern of escalating cruelty. Did you see what she gave him? Mom. Margaret shook her head, tears streaming down her face. No. I just saw her hand reach out. It was quick. I didn't think, oh, Jasper, my poor baby. It's okay, Mom. You didn't know. He stood up. Dr. Ramirez, I'll need a formal statement from you, and I'll need any samples you've collected, stomach contents, blood, anything that could hold evidence of the specific poison used. My team will be in touch. Of course, Chief, she said, her expression compassionate but professional. We'll give Jasper the best care possible, and we'll cooperate fully with your investigation. Liam gently squeezed his mother's shoulder. Stay here with him, Mom. I'll be back as soon as I can. I have work to do. He walked out of the vet clinic into the now bright morning, the ordinariness of the day, a stark contrast to the turmoil inside him. His mind was already working, constructing the investigation. Secure the scene, his mother's yard, canvass the neighborhood, look for any discarded packaging, any trace of the poison, interview Evelyn Holloway, and pray that Jasper, his mother's lifeline, would survive this brutal, calculated assault. The full weight of his office, the skills and resources at his command, would be brought to bear. This wasn't just another case of animal cruelty. This was personal, and Evelyn Holloway was about to discover what it meant to cross the chief of the Animal Welfare Police when his own family was targeted. Liam's first call was to his top investigator, Sergeant Davis, a sharp, experienced officer with a knack for meticulous crime scene processing. Davis, I need you at 7 Primrose Lane, my mother's place. Potential malicious poisoning domestic cat. Victim is critical. I need the yard processed for any foreign substances, food remnants, anything out of place. Full sweep. Then I want you to discreetly check the exterior of number 5 Primrose Evelyn Holloway's residence. Publicly accessible areas only for now. Trash bins, garden beds visible from the street. Look for any discarded poison packaging, specifically anticoagulant rodenticides. Be subtle. I don't want to tip her off yet. Understood, Chief. On my way. How's Jasper? Davis's voice was concerned. He knew how much the cat meant to Liam's mother. Critical Liam repeated the word a heavy weight. And Davis, this one's personal, but we do it by the book. Every I, dotted, every T crossed. Always, Chief. Next, Liam arranged for an officer to take Margaret's formal statement detailing her account of Evelyn Holloway's interaction with Jasper. He knew his mother would be distraught, but her testimony was crucial. He then drove to his own office, his mind a whirl of strategic planning. He needed a warrant to search Holloway's property thoroughly, but for that, he needed more than just Margaret's suspicion, however strong. He needed tangible evidence. Sergeant Davis called back within the hour. Chief, we've done a sweep of your mother's yard. Found a few small dark pellets near the porch, partially dissolved. Looks like some kind of bait. Bagged and tagged for the lab. As for number 5, I checked the recycling bin left out on the curb for pickup. Found an empty blister pack of rat nip brand rodenticide pellets, brodifacoum based, tucked inside a cereal box. It's not definitive proof she used it on Jasper, but it shows she had the means and the specific type of poison Dr. Ramirez suspects. Liam's fists clenched. Rat nip. The brand name seared into his brain. Good work, Davis. Get those pellets from Mom's yard to the lab, top priority, and the packaging from the bin. I want to know if they match. He knew it could take a day or two for the lab results, even with a rush order, Time Jasper might not have. Time that would allow Evelyn Holloway to further cover her tracks if she hadn't already. He decided to pay Ms. Holloway a visit, not as Liam Gallagher, angry son, but as Chief Gallagher investigating a serious crime. Evelyn Holloway answered the door after the third ring, her expression one of mild annoyance that quickly shifted to carefully veiled surprise when she saw Liam in uniform on her doorstep. "Chief Gallagher," she said, her voice cool, betraying no hint of guilt. "To what do I owe this official visit?" "Ms. Holloway, I'm investigating an incident of animal cruelty that occurred in this neighborhood early this morning, specifically the suspected poisoning of a cat belonging to Margaret Gallagher." Liam watched her face intently, not a flicker of emotion, just a slight, almost imperceptible tightening of her lips. "Oh dear," she said, her tone dripping with false concern. "Margaret's cat? Is it serious?" "Critically ill, Ms. Holloway. The vets believe it was intentional poisoning, likely with an anticoagulant rodenticide." He held her gaze. "My mother recalls you interacting with Jasper yesterday afternoon. She said you reached over the hedge and appeared to offer him something." Evelyn Holloway produced a delicate, dismissive laugh. "Goodness, Chief, your mother must be mistaken or overwrought. I may have admired the creature from afar. It is a rather striking animal if one likes cats, but I certainly did not feed it anything." "Why would I? Besides," she added a sharper edge to her voice, "I have no fondness for rodents, but I would never be careless with such substances. I keep my property meticulously pest-free, of course, as per HOA standards, but always with utmost caution and strictly within my own boundaries." Her denial was smooth, practiced. Too smooth. Liam felt his resolve harden. "Ms. Holloway, would you consent to a search of your property to help us eliminate any possibility that the source of the poison might have accidentally originated from your premises?" A flash of something, anger, panic, crossed her eyes before being quickly masked. "A search, Chief Gallagher, that sounds rather accusatory. I've just told you I had nothing to do with this unfortunate incident. I assure you, you won't find anything here. Unless you have a warrant, I'm afraid I must decline. I have a rather busy schedule today. HOA matters, you understand." She began to close the door. "I understand perfectly, Ms. Holloway," Liam said, his voice even. "Thank you for your time." The door clicked shut. Liam stood on her pristine porch for a moment, the scent of her aggressively pruned roses cloying in the air. Her refusal to consent to a search, while her legal right was telling. Innocent people usually wanted to help to clear their names. Evelyn Holloway wanted to hide. He spent the rest of the day coordinating his team reviewing neighborhood security footage. Frustratingly, none of the cameras on Primrose Lane had a clear angle on the side of Margaret's porch where the interaction had occurred. He spoke to other neighbors. Most were guarded, reluctant to say anything negative about the powerful HOA president. But Mrs. Henderson from across the street, a kind elderly woman who was also fond of Jasper, did offer a small but potentially crucial piece of information. "I saw Evelyn in her garden yesterday afternoon." Mrs. Henderson recounted, her brow furrowed in concentration. "She was pottering about near that hedge between her place and Margaret's. I did see her reach over just for a second. I thought she was maybe just patting the cat. But she was wearing those thick gardening gloves she always uses. Seemed a bit odd to pat a cat with those on, wouldn't you say? Gardening gloves, thick ones. It would prevent any direct contact with the poison if she were handling bait pellets. Another small piece of the puzzle." The call from Dr. Ramirez later that evening was somber. "Jasper's still with us, Chief, but he's had a bleeding episode. We're managing it, but he's very weak. He's a fighter, that's for sure, but it's going to be a long night." Liam's heart ached. He drove back to the clinic, found his mother asleep in the uncomfortable waiting room chair, her face etched with worry even in slumber. He gently woke her, persuaded her to go home with him, promising to call with any updates. He couldn't bear for her to keep vigil there all night. The lab results came through the next morning. The pellets found on Margaret's porch were indeed brodifacoum-based rodenticide, and they were a perfect match for the Rat Nip brand, whose packaging Sergeant Davis had recovered from Evelyn Holloway's recycling bin. It was the link he needed. Combined with Margaret's testimony, Mrs. Henderson's observation about the gloves, and Holloway's suspicious refusal to consent to a search, Liam was confident he had enough for a warrant. He met with the district attorney, laid out the evidence. The DA, a no-nonsense former prosecutor named Alicia Mendez, listened intently. "It's strong, Liam. Circumstantial, yes, but a very compelling chain of circumstance. The matching poison is key. Her past investigation for neglect, while not admissible as character evidence unless she testifies, certainly paints a picture for us. Let's get that warrant. The warrant was signed by a judge that afternoon. Liam decided to execute it himself along with Sergeant Davis and two other trusted officers from his unit. He wanted to see Evelyn Holloway's face when she realized the net was closing. They arrived at number 5 Primrose Lane just as the sun was beginning to set, casting long, ominous shadows across the perfect lawn. Evelyn Holloway answered the door, her composure still intact, though her eyes narrowed when she saw the official document in Liam's hand. Ms. Holloway. Liam said, his voice devoid of inflection. This is a search warrant legally authorizing us to search your premises, including your house garage and any outbuildings, for evidence related to the poisoning of the cat, Jasper, and for illegal substances, specifically anticoagulant rodenticides, and any paraphernalia related to their deployment. Her face paled visibly. The mask of arrogant disdain finally slipped, revealing a flicker of raw fear. This is outrageous harassment. You will not find anything. Then you have nothing to worry about, Liam said, stepping aside to allow his team to enter. The search was methodical, thorough. Liam assigned Davis to search the garage and garden shed areas where pesticides and rodenticides would most likely be stored. He and another officer began with the kitchen and utility areas. Evelyn Holloway trailed them, her earlier bravado replaced by a simmering, anxious silence, her lawyer now on speakerphone advising her to remain silent and observe. In the garage, tucked away on a high shelf behind some old paint cans, Sergeant Davis found another box of ratnip rodenticide, this one nearly full. And beside it, a pair of thick leather gardening gloves, the ones Mrs. Henderson had described. On one of the gloves, almost invisible to the naked eye, was a tiny smear of dark, crumbly residue. Chief Davis called out his voice, carefully neutral, but with an undertone of triumph. Liam joined him in the garage. He looked at the box of poison, then at the gloves. He nodded slowly. Bag and tag everything, Davis, especially those gloves. I want the lab to check that residue against the pellets we found at my mother's. Back in the house, the other officer found something else of interest in Holloway's home office, detailed financial projections for the HOA's beautification project, alongside incorporation documents for EH Premier Designs listing Evelyn Holloway as the sole director. And tucked into a ledger, a series of invoices from EH Premier Designs to the HOA for preliminary consulting work already paid, totaling several $1,000s. It was clear she stood to gain significantly if the project was approved at the upcoming meeting. This provided a powerful motive for wanting to silence any opposition, even perceived opposition, from a quiet elderly woman and her cat. The final damning piece of evidence came from the lab results on the gloves rushed through late that evening. The residue on the gardening glove was a perfect match to the brodifacoum pellets found on Margaret's porch and to the ratnip product. They had her. The HOA general meeting was scheduled for the following evening in the Willow Creek Community Hall. Liam knew Evelyn Holloway would be there, desperate to push through her beautification project to maintain her facade of control, unaware of the full extent of the evidence Liam's team had gathered. He decided that would be the most fitting place for the confrontation, publicly. In front of the community she had manipulated and harmed. Dr. Ramirez called just before Liam left for the meeting. Good news, Chief. Jasper's turned a corner. His clotting times are improving. He even ate a little bit of food on his own. He's not out of the woods yet, but I'm much more optimistic. He's a little fighter. Relief, profound and overwhelming, washed over Liam. Jasper was going to make it. Now, for justice. The community hall was packed. Evelyn Holloway sat at the head table looking imperious, though Liam detected a new tension around her eyes. She opened the meeting, her voice crisp, immediately launching into her proposal for the beautification project, extolling its virtues, downplaying its exorbitant cost. When she opened the floor for discussion, Liam stood up. He wasn't in uniform tonight, but his presence, his quiet authority, commanded attention. Ms. Holloway, he began, his voice clear and steady, carrying to every corner of the room. Before we discuss landscaping, I believe there's a more pressing matter the community needs to be aware of. The matter of the deliberate, malicious poisoning of an elderly resident's therapy animal, Jasper the cat. A murmur went through the crowd. Evelyn Holloway's face tightened. Mr. Gallagher, this is hardly the time or place for personal grievances. We are here to discuss official HOA business. "This is official business," Ms. Holloway Liam said, "when it involves a felony crime committed in this community by a member of this community, a crime for which the Animal Welfare Police have now identified a primary suspect." He paused, letting his words hang in the air. "The evidence, including traces of the specific poison used on Jasper, was found on items in your possession, Ms. Holloway, inside your home. We also have evidence that you stand to gain financially to a significant degree from this beautification project, providing a clear motive for attempting to intimidate or silence any perceived opposition, such as my mother, Margaret Gallagher, by attacking her beloved and essential therapy animal." Evelyn Holloway shot to her feet, her face mottling with rage. "This is slander lies. You have no proof. You're just trying to discredit me because I run this HOA with standards." "We have the poison," Ms. Holloway Liam stated calmly. "We have the packaging from your trash. We have the contaminated gloves from your garage. We have witness testimony. We have your financial records. We have everything we need." At that moment, Sergeant Davis and another uniformed animal welfare officer entered the hall from a side entrance, moving to stand unobtrusively near the main door. Evelyn Holloway saw them, and her eyes widened in dawning horror. The color drained from her face. "Evelyn Holloway." Liam continued, his voice resonating with the weight of his office and the depth of his personal conviction as chief of the Haven County Animal Welfare Police. "I am placing you under arrest for felony animal cruelty under Statute 34B, subsection 2, which carries a maximum penalty of 5 years imprisonment and a $50,000 fine. You are also being investigated for financial misconduct related to your activities as HOA president." The uniformed officers moved forward as Sergeant Davis formally recited her Miranda rights. Holloway, her arrogance finally shattered, seemed to crumple. She didn't resist as the handcuffs were applied, only a choked, sputtering sound escaping her lips. The residents of Willow Creek Estates watched in stunned silence as their long, reigning, tyrannical HOA president was led away, her reign of petty cruelty and hidden greed brought to an ignominious end. In the days that followed, the full story of Evelyn Holloway's actions and her past came to light, sending shockwaves through Willow Creek. The HOA was thrown into turmoil, but also into a period of much-needed re-evaluation. An interim board was quickly established, comprised of residents who were genuinely committed to transparency and the well-being of the community, not personal power or profit. Jasper, after a week in intensive care and several more weeks of careful recuperation at home, under Margaret's devoted nursing, made a full recovery. His majestic fur grew back, his sage green eyes regained their sparkle, and his purr, once silenced by poison, rumbled as deeply and contentedly as ever. He was, if possible, even more devoted to Margaret, rarely leaving her side, a furry warm shadow of comfort and love. The veterinary bills were substantial, but an anonymous collection, organized by Mrs. Henderson and other supportive neighbors, covered a significant portion, a testament to the quiet kindness that had always existed in Primrose Lane, overshadowed, but not extinguished by Evelyn's negativity. Evelyn Holloway, facing overwhelming evidence, eventually pleaded guilty to felony animal cruelty and several lesser charges related to financial impropriety to avoid a more prolonged and embarrassing trial. She was sentenced to 2 years in state prison, with a further 3 years of probation, during which she was banned from owning any animals or holding any fiduciary position in a community organization. She was also ordered to pay full restitution for Jasper's veterinary care and substantial fines. Her house on Primrose Lane was sold to cover her legal fees and debts, its pristine facade a hollow reminder of the ugliness it had concealed. With Evelyn gone, a lightness returned to Primrose Lane. Margaret's garden flourished untroubled by complaints. She and Jasper, once again, enjoyed peaceful afternoons in the communal garden, now a true sanctuary, free from judgment and hostility. The community, having faced the darkness within its midst, emerged stronger, more united, with a renewed appreciation for the simple decencies of neighborliness and the profound importance of compassion for both humans and the animals who share their lives. Liam Gallagher continued his work, the resolution of Jasper's case, a quiet source of deep personal and professional satisfaction. It was a stark reminder of why he did what he did, a reaffirmation of his commitment to protect the vulnerable and bring to justice those who would harm them. Holding Jasper, feeling the soft weight of the cat in his lap and the steady rhythmic vibration of his purr, Liam knew that this was a victory that resonated far beyond the confines of Primrose Lane. It was a victory for kindness, for justice, and for the enduring healing power of the bond between a gentlewoman and her beloved therapy cat, a bond that even the most calculated cruelty could not break. The sound of Jasper's contented purr was the sweetest kind of justice.